Nigeria, a large country by any standard, with our population of almost 200 million persons and still counting, has the second largest HIV epidemic in the world. According to some statistics that we gathered, prevalence rate is believed to be deceptively low relative to this huge population. However, prevalence figures as of December 2017 stand at 3.2 million people living with HIV and AIDS in the country, mostly in the economically active segment of between 15 and 49 years. Almost most people are unaware of their HIV status, and this is another challenge. It is estimated that there are over 3,200,000 people living with HIV in 2016, among which only about 30% were accessing antiretroviral therapy. Among them, pregnant women living with HIV, 32% were accessing treatment to prevent mother-to-child transmission. Only 27% of infected children have access to ART. On this special edition of Bridges, we take a look from the social-economic perspective, the impact of HIV on our social structure. What are we doing to mitigate this, and what we are not doing? There should be significant reduction in the number of new infections, increase in the uptake of ART, and reduction in mother-to-child transmission if we are not to lose a significant percentage of our young active population to HIV/AIDS circle. Welcome to Bridges. I'm Mujima Konjola, and we're still working for a sustainable society. On Bridges today, we have a new dimension. We have a new NACA that is out. We have the newly inaugurated chairperson representing all of us, as it were. And then we have the Director General here. First, let me introduce Her Excellency, former Deputy Governor of Plateau State and now Chairman of NACA. I call her Excellency Pauline Talent. Ma'am, you're welcome.
Thank you, Maji.
And then we have dynamic Director General of NACA, Dr. Sani Aliyu. You're also welcome on Bridges. This is not your first time.
No, it's not.
But I'm sure this is on a pleasant one.
It's a pleasure.
Yes, and I have here vibrant Nigerians, brave ones that have actually, they're living it out and giving hope to all of us out there that HIV does not have to be a death sentence. Should I say, ladies and gentlemen, you're all welcome on the program. And just before we continue, in fact, one of our champions of people that have lived with hope with HIV is here with us, and it's her birthday. And I think on Bridges we should celebrate Dubai. Let's give her a round of applause. Happy birthday. And
happy birthday, Jamaica.
Yes, and the fact that you're here shows that really HIV doesn't have to be a death sentence. So, a new regime, a new stand, a new way, and we have, serious problems that we really must work with in terms, particularly when we look at the impact of HIV on the family. What are the new things that we need to do? And I want us to look at issues cascading down to the local government areas where a lot of our people actually have the impact of HIV. I'll start with our new chairperson. Yes. Yeah, let's hear from you.
Thank you very much, Maji. Nigerians, I'm sure nobody will be happy to hear that we are the second highest in the world, with the highest percentage of people living with HIV. HIV/AIDS is not a death sentence. I'm happy we have some of our young men and women here that are living their normal lives and are not ashamed. But all of us must do everything possible to encourage people going for checkup, to make sure you go for tests to know your HIV status. We need to aggressively, the new board is committed to ensure that we go on advocacy, aggressive enlightenment to Nigerians, because HIV is real, it's living with us, but people don't hear much about HIV these days. There's nobody talking about HIV, and we need to come out and speak more and let Nigerians know that our status in the world map is really high, and we need to do something aggressively to curb the further spread of it. It is clear that Mr. President is committed, because the NACA for the past 7 years had no board. And for him putting in place a new board shows his political support. So with the political will from Mr. President, I'm sure we'll go places to ensure that we encourage people going out to run their tests and know their HIV status. The area of my greatest worry is preventing the mother-to-child transmission, because it will be very sad for a child to be born with HIV, AIDS, and that means that that child will live for life on medication. That is not acceptable. I want to appeal with a loud voice to all Nigerians that pregnant women must go for HIV tests. It is mandatory, and it should be part of the routine checkup for every pregnant woman to ensure that they know their HIV status, and once they know and it is confirmed, it can be handled and the child will be born safe without HIV. Right. So I pray that we'll have the cooperation of Nigerians to do all that we can to stop the further spread of HIV, and for those that are not on treatment now, our target is to extend beyond the number that have been confirmed, because I know that more than a lot of Nigerians are working with it without knowing, because they have not gone to run the test to confirm their HIV status. So we are appealing, we are begging Nigerians to please come out. There's nothing shameful about it. There's nothing, it's not a death sentence. Go out, check your HIV status, and be sure that you are safe. And in case you have it, the treatment is there, and you live your normal life, healthy looking and everything.
I thank you very much for that hope, particularly the political will that has been so assured. Now, moving forward, we have cases of children that are orphaned. And orphaned because they lost both parents as a result of HIV. And the concern now is, what hope for these children? And that's when we talk of the social impact on HIV. A lot of these children have been sent back to the village. They live with their grandmothers, and there's no hope for them. We don't even know their status. Maybe some of them are infected, you know, some have. So does NACA has anything in place that will, well, let us speak to the fate of these unfortunate orphans?
So you're quite right. HIV continues to have a significant social impact for a disease condition that affects a relatively low number of people population-wise. If you look internationally, the total number of people living with HIV is estimated to be about 32 million or so. So compared to the whole population of 6 billion, it's a relatively small number. But despite that, the social impact is significant because it affects parents, it affects children. You get transmission across the board. We do have a program, not only us, but also our partners, the US government and also Global Fund, called OVC. It's called Orphans and Vulnerable Children. And essentially what happens is funding is provided to non-governmental organizations to identify orphans, not necessarily orphans of parents that have had HIV, but orphans across the board, because it's really the risk, the fact that you don't have anybody looking after you, and you're just out there in the streets, etc., and therefore you become vulnerable to exploitation, sexual exploitation. But it continues to be a major issue for us, both in NACA as well as our partners. I know the US government, for instance, for this coming year, they're putting something like $30 million US towards the OVC program that they have, which is quite a considerable amount of funds. In NACA, we do have a unit within NACA, which is part of our community care and prevention department, that deals specifically with issues relating relating to orphans and vulnerable children. And again, I would say HIV affects families, but it also affects the ability of families to generate income. If you are sick, you're not going to be able to go out and work. HIV affects the most productive part of the population, people between the ages of 15 to their early 40s. And these are the people that go out and get bread on the table. And therefore, tackling HIV is not only a health issue. HIV shouldn't be looked at purely from a health perspective, but rather from a development perspective for the country. We talk about GDP. If you have a GDP increase, for every 1% GDP increase, you have a similar percentage increase when it comes to life expectancy.
Yes,
so the treatment has been shown to significantly impact life expectancy. If you have HIV today and you're on treatment, your life expectancy will more or less normalize, provided you haven't been picked up at a very late stage of your illness. Therefore, essentially what we're looking at is having a critical number of people within the country, 3 million people living with HIV, but 3 million people that could potentially go on to treatment and could potentially contribute to the economy. So it's about time we stop looking at HIV purely from the perspective of a disease condition, but from the perspective of it's in our best interest, all of us, to work together to sort out this problem once and for all, for our families, for our children, for our brothers and our sisters, so that people can be able to go out and contribute to society in a very productive way.
Yes. And that's why I would now come back to this side of the set, and we're looking here at, you know, building a bridge of hope where people, even if eventually, I mean, the findings are that you're HIV positive, does not stop your life. And because some people actually, you know, they get stuck with it. Oh my God, it's HIV, okay, I'm waiting for the D-Day. These are soldiers and survivors, someone, you know, few here that have bravely come on set. I mean, how was life? Give us a bit of your experience before and the after and the now. Yes, let's know you.
My name is Abosede Oladayo, and before HIV, life was just there, you know. I was a single parent when I knew I had HIV, and I told my son, he was 7, when I told him that, see, I'm going to die, but my mom is going to take care of you and my elder brother. Don't worry. But 4 years down the line, my mother was diagnosed of having cancer of the lower intestine, and she died. And my son is going to be 24. He's a graduate of, he studied pure mathematics in Lasut. And I got married again, and I had 2 kids after HIV.
And both are not infected?
They are both negative, and they are great kids. They are wonderful children, and my husband is negative. And I remember my father-in-law seeing me on NTA one day talking about HIV, disclosing publicly. And he said, this woman you brought home, I've seen her 3 times on TV saying she's HIV positive. Have been a positive face to HIV for the past 16 years, and I was made a global ambassador by an NGO called the World Project in US. And I currently work at the National Call Center, where I counsel people who call on a daily basis. I also try to bridge the gap of communication among the in-school youth and out-of-school youth. I take HIV information and education to school.
And you think it's important?
Yes, it's very, very important, because kids are practicing unsafe sex. They've started having sex from primary school. And when I go to schools, they ask me amazing questions. And I live in a community where someone walked up to me and said, see, I'm also living with HIV, and my daughter is having HIV too. You know, that is how bad it is. In a compound, you have me and some other people living with HIV. And when I give a head count, I'm like, oh, it's like what they say, 1 in 10. This is 1 in 8 person. So we have 3 in 8 person living with HIV. So it is not getting better by the day. The information is not getting across to the community, the grassroots community. And what I've been doing for the past 2 years now is to bridge the gap of communication.
Yeah, that's what we are doing
In
here.
as much as I counsel people at the call center where they can call the 6222 line, which is free, it's totally free for Ethel and Etisalat. So I go to primary health care center to also talk to pregnant women. That is not a death sentence. When they tell you are HIV positive, you can still give birth to a negative baby. I had a negative baby who weighed 4.5 kg in Luth. And you know, the psychological trauma of a mother who is infected, anytime your child gets sick, you start thinking, oh, maybe I've infected the child, oh, maybe this. And funny enough, these children came out negative. They are both negative and they are doing well. Academically, they are sound. They are fantastic kids.
That's a good one. Yes.
My name is Jumai Danuk. I'm a lawyer by training, an AIDS activist, you call me that. But most particularly, I think I'm a victor when it comes to fighting and surviving HIV. My story is quite funny. I'd finished law school. I was about to begin life. I fell ill, had a series of operations and all that before I was finally diagnosed with HIV. I actually thought I was going to die. I told the physician I was talking to that something had to kill one, and if it was HIV, no problem. I was ready to go. But along the line, I had something to fight for. I'm a single parent. I had something to fight for. One day my son walked up to me and said, "Mommy, why are you always sick? I mean, are you going to die and leave me?" And I said, no. And that was the turnaround for me. Because I couldn't imagine dying and leaving my son. Although I have a very supportive family, but I couldn't imagine dying and leaving him. And by God's grace, it's been 16 years. It's been 16 years of victory every day. 16 years of making a difference in people's lives. 16 years of seeing someone down there, almost giving up, talking to that person, and the person is doing good today. 16 years of doing what I know best, reaching out to people and making a difference. By God's grace, my son is negative. He is an undergraduate. He's almost done with university. And I still do what I do.
What has been the experience you have seen? You are opportuned to stay healthy and stay alive. How would you want to share the experiences of others that you have met, because you have worked, I know, even at the grassroots level? What has been the impact of HIV?
Back home, I did a lot of work back home. I'm from Plateau State, and I've worked very extensively in the southern part of Plateau State, and I've seen that it's not being infected with the virus that kills the people. It's the fact that they've lost hope. You know, there's no one there to hold their hand and say it's going to be okay. And there's no one to tell them that, okay, yes, you get on treatment. I'm going to give you some skills to move on with life. People have lost jobs because of their infections, because of self-stigma. Some people have resigned from their work, and they have no opportunity to learn new skills. I was fortunate. I went to school. I'm educated. But that uneducated woman in the village, when she's told she has HIV, she doesn't know what HIV is. All she knows that she's been told she's going to die. And so she gives up a hope. And for me, I go and tell them, hey, I've been living with this thing for over 16 years. I'm doing well. At a point in time, I was almost a 20 plus in size, but I had to work on my weight. And I tell them, if I can beat it, you can beat it. I become a beacon of hope. You know, keep telling them, you can do it, you can do it. You just need someone to hold your hand. Let me be that person to hold your hand. Let's walk this journey together. And by God's grace, I've been able to set up a cooperative of women who I have taught other skills apart from farming. And they're doing quite well. They're all women who are living with the virus. And they're earning their own monies. And they're looking good. And that makes me really proud.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I'm Victor Laure Moshen, a project management expert. I'm a treatment advocate. I work with network of people living with HIV/AIDS in Nigeria as the national coordinator. For about 12 to 13 years now, I got to know my HIV status. And ever since then, I've lost about 5 members of my family. I wouldn't say they died as a result of lack of access to treatment, but I would say ignorance, self-stigma, and fear of the unknown. So I decided to be open about my status so I can help a lot of young people, adolescents, and other people generally in the populations who are scared of getting to know their status and fighting stigma. So I'll call myself an AIDS navigator because I'm HIV positive. That doesn't mean I have AIDS and I'm never going to get AIDS, because I'm actually assessing treatment and I'm doing very well on my treatment. And the most beautiful thing about it is my wife is HIV negative and my kids are HIV negative. And I think it's really sent a lot of message to the general population when I'm able to give a voice and give the face so that people can have their hope rekindled and they can actually get the confidence to say that it's something we can live with, you know. But the internal will is what really matters. People need to have the self-confidence, the self-assurance, and the guarantee, the self-esteem to say that, yes, I can survive and deal with it. And I think it's very important for every Nigerian. It's not a death sentence. And with the National Court Center 6222, which is a wonderful information line where people can call with all their lines. It's free, toll-free. You can call to ask questions about how can I get tested, where can I go get tested, where can I get treatment access if I'm HIV positive. And of course, the treatment for people with HIV is free. So it's actually free for a long time, and up to now it's free. So I think I will also join my the voice to what the chair of NACA have said, that all women in Nigeria should be encouraged to get tested, whether you're pregnant or not, whether you want to get married or not. Everybody should get to know their status, because that's the entry point for you to have access to HIV medications.
Thank you very much. Yes.
My name is Kingsley Esomano. I work with the National Agency for Control of AIDS as an Assistant Chief Program Officer, Community Prevention and Care Services.
Is it difficult convincing Nigerians to know their status? Is it a problem?
It's not difficult, but it's the will to take up this.
So it's a challenge that we must address.
Yes.
People voluntarily coming up
to say, I'm going for the test. It's the fear of the unknown that makes people
the fear of the unknown. Let's get the field experience.
Yeah, my name is Kemi Yusufu, and I reported health for almost 10 years, and I run an online medium now. I think the greatest challenge for Nigeria, I want to leave, the human aspect, to go to the funding aspect as a journalist, because we need to own our national response. Nigeria, invests very negligible amount compared to what foreign donors bring in, and we know that there's donor fatigue, and then we really need to own our, national response at the federal and state level and fund, because nowadays I've met one or two people who say they pay for service charge as high as 5,000 in a country that 18,000 naira is our minimum wage, and we are mostly rural dwellers. So 5,000 naira is a lot of money for somebody, to pay at where they receive treatment. So we need to, improve on funding the national response.
Yes, yeah. Well, I'll bring back the conversation to this side. What are we to expect, and what are the responsibilities within the context of the fact that the donors, their pockets are becoming thinner and thinner every day?
So you're quite right. The issue of donor fatigue is a real one. The issue of dependency on external funding is also a real one. For a country like Nigeria, there is absolutely no reason why we shouldn't own our response, and we're working towards that. We've had a meeting on 2 occasions where we presented to the National Economic Council. In fact, the second time, we just wrote to them and said we wanted to remind them about what the governors agreed, and we were told no, come physically and represent again, because that message needs to continue to go out. HIV care is affordable for government, especially the state governments. A lot of the states do not have a huge number of people living with HIV. It costs about 50,000 naira to keep a patient on treatment for a year. It's cheaper than if you have insulin-dependent diabetes. it's cheaper than being treated for cancer. And not only that, not only will it get you healthy and get you moving again, but it will stop you transmitting HIV to your loved ones. You need to see a woman who has delivered a child who has HIV and her child is HIV negative. Just look at her face and see
the joy.
See the joy. And that joy is felt across the board with the physicians and everybody else who's looked after her. In this time and age, there is no reason why a child should be born with HIV. None. We have 1,060,000 people on treatment. Only 60,000 are being looked after by government of Nigeria. About 1 million are being looked after by the United States government and Global Fund. They don't have an obligation to look after our people. And that's why we have been working with the state governors. They have committed to putting 0.5 to 1% of their federal monthly allocation. A miserable 1%, Moji. I'm not asking for 5% or 10%. A miserable 1% will help us sort out the prevention of mother-to-child transmission issues, and will also help us sort out the issue of charges, user charges, universal access. And my challenge to the state governors is they should emulate governors like the Kaduna State Governor, for instance, who has been putting a lot of resources into HIV. They should emulate governors that have actually put themselves as chairs of the state agencies for the control of AIDS. HIV is real. HIV will not go away. It's about time we stop playing ostrich and face this head on.
Chair, final word from you.
I'm blessed with a very committed team members of the board who are committed to see that we do everything possible to control the spread of HIV, especially the mother and child transmission. I also want to appeal to the National Assembly, and knowing the commitment of the leadership of both the upper and lower house, I am sure when we reach out to appeal to them, they will give us the necessary backing so that Nigeria will have its national response, and then a step further to check and treat all those affected with HIV free.
Well, that sounds very hopeful, and I think it's a good one for Jumai, who is celebrating her birthday, and so that when you move to the communities, you know that really there's a political will to ensure that people get to know their status, and more than anything else, if you need treatment, you also can access treatment. But more than that, I think what the chair and of course all of us here believe, and we want to beg, and that's the bridge that we intend to build with this episode of Bridges, is that know your status. When you do that, we will stem and of course contain the high prevalence of HIV in Nigeria. I thank you all for coming, Chair, the Director General, and of course my brave soldiers, and of course my colleague who is also helping to ensure that the prevalence of HIV is reduced in Nigeria. Now, Bridges will be back same time next week.